All right, what we're going to talk about here is the ethical and legal considerations in sports medicine. So, we'll roll on through this here. All right, some legal things that you need to understand, some legal terms. Liability. Liability means what you are responsible for. If you did something and you did it poorly and somebody got hurt, you would be liable. So, liable is your amount of things that you're responsible for. Assumption of risk. This is something that we usually have athletes fill out a form about that says that they understand that there's a risk with playing this sport and there is a good chance that something could happen. So uh, that's what an assumption of risk is. Try using this pen as a pointer here. All right, risk management. Risk management is simply us trying to reduce the amount of risk that there is to doing any kind of a task. Sports medicine is part of it, is risk management. Why do we not tackle with our head down in football? That is actually risk management. It's a rule, but you have a much better chance of somebody breaking their neck if they tackle at the top of their head. Why do we make sure that our athletes nowadays get water at practice? That's risk management because we understand that there's a greater risk now, so we need to make sure that doesn't happen. Negligence. Negligence is pretty simple. Negligence is you didn't do what you were supposed to do, or whatever you did it poorly. Therefore, if you are negligent, you can have liability. I didn't do something right, so now I'm responsible for it. So those are some legal terms that you need to understand as far as sports medicine. Some other ones. Standard of care. The standard of care is what everybody is doing nationwide uh, or in a region. Standard of care in high school in Louisiana is if you're having a football game, the standard of care is there's an athletic trainer on the sideline. The standard of care is an athletic trainer is if I suspect there's a fracture, I evaluate it. If I find a positive signs to my fracture or my fracture tests, then I put them in a splint and I send them to the emergency room. That's a standard of care. That is what the public is entitled to when it comes down to their athletic care. Malfeasance and misfeasance and nonfeasance. Malfeasance is basically you do something poorly. Misfeasance is you didn't do it or you neglected it. And nonfeasance means you just didn't do it at all. These are all ways that people can get sued. They didn't do their job more than anything else, and somebody suffered for it. So that's those three terms there. All right, gross negligence. Gross negligence goes beyond regular old negligence. Gross negligence is you did such a terrible job that it can't be overlooked at all. You did something that was you stood there and watched somebody die while you could have been giving them CPR. That's gross negligence. All right, malpractice. Let's look at the breakdown of this word here. Because if you look at it this way, it makes it easy to understand. Mal means what? Bad. If I want to practice something, I'm going to do it over and over again until I get it right. Doctors practice medicine. They do it over and over and over again. Malpractice is bad practice. So if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing is malpractice. Now, something you need to be aware of, especially in the world of healthcare that we live in, just because you get a bad outcome does not necessarily mean that malpractice existed. My mama died because the doctors didn't do what they were supposed to and she died. That doesn't necessarily mean it was malpractice. If they did everything that they were supposed to do and she still died, there was no malpractice involved because medicine is still as much an art as it is a science. And there's still some things that we can't scientifically determine one way or the other. All right, ethics. The best description I ever heard of ethics was what is good, right, and proper. Just because something's illegal doesn't make it unethical, and just because something's unethical doesn't mean it is illegal. Let me think of a way to describe that to you. Abortion is a good example. Abortion is legal in the United States, but in many people's opinion, it is unethical because you're putting to death an unborn baby. So it's legal, but it's unethical. An example where something is illegal but ethical, let's say you have a glass of wine with your parents at dinner. Technically, that's illegal because you're under the age of 21. But it's really probably not unethical because that's your family tradition. You have a glass of wine at dinner. You might have French roots or something like that. But that's the difference between the two. But ethics is what is good, right, and proper. And it's not always what's legal. Sometimes it's what's legal, sometimes it's not. A tort is a legal wrongdoing. You hit somebody with a club, that's a tort. And litigation is fighting things out in a law firm or in a court of law. All right, battery. In the state of Louisiana, not only do you have to include battery, you have to include this as well. Let's see if I can write it. I'm trying to write as assault. Hey, that's pretty good for me. All right. In Louisiana, assault and battery many times go hand in hand. And something you need to understand is Louisiana law is based in French common law. It's not based in English common law. You learned that in some history class somewhere. Under English common law, assault is where you threaten someone. Battery is where you actually touch them if they don't want it. Because we're under French common law in Louisiana, assault and battery are actually switched. Battery in Louisiana is if you say something to somebody or make them fear that they're going to be injured or fear for their life. The actual assault is touching the person. So we just need to know that these two terms here go hand in hand. And if very seldom can you have an assault and not have a battery. All right. These things are tied together. All right. Code of ethics. NATA has a code of ethics that athletic trainers are required to follow. This is what's good, right, and proper for athletic trainers to do. It's based in the Hippocratic Oath, which the Hippocratic Oath basically says that you will do no harm to your patients. And that's kind of what our code of ethics is geared towards. All right. School district athletic philosophy and regulations. Different school districts have different philosophies when it comes to sports. We have to follow a code of ethics. We also have to follow the regulations. The LSHAA is our athletic governing body in the state of Louisiana. Right now, a good example of this is high school football. We are not currently doing anything with high school football. The reason being, the LSHAA does not feel that it is safe to currently do anything with football. No matter what people's personal opinions are, and if you ever met any football coaches, they would basically say there's no reason in the world you shouldn't play football. There could be lightning flying down from the sky with thunderbolts and giant balls of lava, and they would still think that they should be playing football. So the LSHAA has had to step in and say, look, we're under COVID-19 right now. There's no way that you can be safe. There's no way that you can be socially distant. We're trying to stop the spread of this virus. We can't have football. And they keep pushing football back. That is because of the LSHAA. and that is a state organization that takes care of that. All right. So the LSHA sets up rules for training and standards and scholastic eligibility. They set up all those rules. They're the ones that say that you can't start practice till a certain date. They're the ones that say that you can't have more than 2 Fs on your report card and be academically eligible. That is all the LSHAA. Some citizenship is important as far as participating. Other states, it's not that big a deal. You don't have to be a citizen to participate in sports in some states. Louisiana is one of those states. Policies on tryouts, dismissal from a team, quitting the team, travel regulations, outside competition, participation in the school district. These might be regulated by your school district. They might be regulated by your school. Livingston Parish does not have a standard policy set for dismissal from a team, because I've seen people stay on teams here that would have got dismissed from other schools. Travel regulations are kind of regulated by the state or by the school, by our school district, but not really. But these are all different things that you could have policies about with your school district. All right, liability insurance. Most employers carry liability insurance on employees who are working for them. When the athletic trainer works outside of the job, the trainer should carry additional liability insurance in case of a lawsuit. What this means is, when I'm here at school working as an athletic trainer, I have liability insurance that covers me through the school district. But I also have my own personal liability insurance that covers me for out of school activities. If I'm working as an athletic trainer for, I don't know, a hospital, and I'm on a sideline, the hospital will have liability insurance for me. But I also have personal liability insurance that in case something happens and I get sued, I'm protected. All right. So how do we keep from getting sued? That's the important question. What are things that get people sued? Lack of supervision is the number one reason why people sue people in athletics. There's a kid in Mississippi that died during 2 days this year from heat exhaustion. That should not happen. That is lack of supervision, one. They don't know if nobody's paying any attention to the kid, making sure he's hydrated. 2, he might not have been adequately trained for what the coach was asking him what to do. He might have not been acclimatized. So that's another thing to get people sued. Improper, inadequate medical treatment by one or more members of the sports medicine team. A couple of years ago in the state of Louisiana, we had a school district sued because they had a kid that wasn't feeling good. It was a football game, and the kid started throwing up on the sidelines, and the coach, because they were still playing the game, told the kid to go sit on the bus, and they'd get him home as soon as the game was over. Well, guess what? He didn't make it the whole way through the game. He died on the bus from heat exhaustion, which progressed into heat stroke. So that would be an example of not treating him properly and giving him the proper medical care that he's due. Faulty equipment or facilities. This is something that we can actually help to reduce litigation for. The first domain of athletic training always has been prevention. So it's important for the athletic trainer to realize what his athletics facilities are like. And we need to realize when facilities are unsafe. And if they are unsafe, we either need to make them safe or not let people participate in that activity in that particular gymnasium. If somebody came in and the backboard had a big giant crack in it the whole way up through the glass, would it be smart or safe to let kids shoot a basketball at that? And the answer is no. So that is important, paying attention to equipment. And if something's unsafe, making it safe or taking it out of service, one or the other is important. All right. Another place where you're seeing a lot of lawsuits now is for sexual harassment, discrimination, other inappropriate behaviors by one or more members of the sports staff. But this is education in general. Sexual harassment, sexual abuse, that is a definitely large spot for potential litigation. And that's something that can be completely avoided. One of the things you'll notice at the school is in my training room, I've got a window so you can see in. Unless it's something that's going to be potentially embarrassing for the athlete, we keep the window open. I very seldom go in there all by myself. I usually have somebody else in there with me. Uh, so just being smart is important. All right, don't allow anybody to start participating without an assigned informed consent and liability release. We've got physicals coming up this week, and part of the paperwork that has to be filled out is a liability release. Uh, it's always a good idea to agree on fees before a sport starts so that people have a better idea what things are going to cost. That's another thing to keep you from getting sued. Make sure adequate facilities are available for both men and women. You can't have one group in a better facility than the other. You'll notice in our basketball program, they alternate between the air-conditioned gym. Some days the girls have it, some days the boys have it. All right. If possible, avoid being alone in the room with an athlete or client, or to avoid the suggestion of inappropriate behavior. Like I said, we don't really want to be one-on-one if we can avoid it. Keep detailed notes about all professional activities and those of the team. That goes back to keeping your paperwork, and keep your paperwork straight. Paperwork is going to help protect you from getting sued. Develop an EAP for every sport. We have an EAP specific to venues here at Doyle High School, and that helps us. Actually, we look at it every couple years in sports medicine class, and we reevaluate it. So, become familiar with products and supplies used. Become familiar with the tools of your trade. That's just smart. Read all dealers or manufacturers' warnings and disclaimers. Make sure your athletes or clients are aware of them. Last year, I had some students on a day when I was out sick in the training room messing around with a stem machine. They were not supposed to be in there. They got in there anyway. There's manufacturers' warnings or disclaimers. One of them is do not use unless you're under supervision. Well, they weren't under supervision. Of course, they were doing something stupid with it. So that is a place that we need to protect ourselves from litigation. So we put a different lock on the door. Consider all sports involved in the athletic program, not just the ones that are conducted on a court or field. You don't want to discriminate against one sport or another just because you don't cover their practices. Can I make cross-country athletes be second-class citizens just because they are cross-country athletes and I don't usually cover their practice? Or golf. Does a golfer deserve the same care as a first-string football player? And the answer is yes. Yes, he does. So we cannot get ourselves in that football's the only important thing mentality. I've seen that happen before. It's a good way to get sued. Follow all appropriate procedures on all injury assessments. Whether they are a golfer or whether they're your All-American quarterback, you still need to assess their injuries properly. Supervise your athletes during treatment, whether they're in the clinic or in the sidelines. Make sure your coaches are up to date. Make sure the coaches are aware of health problems the athlete might have. Because I can't be everywhere, but it's important for the coach to know, hey, this kid's diabetic. We need to watch him, make sure he eats before he plays, things like that. We need to conduct pre-season and post-season reviews. This is called quality assessment. We need to see what we did good and keep doing what we did good and figure out what we could have done better and what can we do to make it better. That is just continuous quality improvement. And that's something that's not specific to sports medicine. That's across the world. It doesn't matter if you go start making computer chips. Total quality improvement is something that company's interested in. Make safety a daily approach. We need to be of a safety mindset. We want to keep people safe. That keeps people from getting hurt. Make a daily checklist for key items of concern. If there's certain things that you need to do every day, put it on a checklist. Check it off. Know your limitations. Don't try and do stuff that you are not covered under your scope of practice as an athletic trainer for. You can't go cutting somebody open to dig out a splinter. That is not within your scope of practice, so we need to know our limitations. Be aware of changes in standards of care and other changes that affect the field of work. The standard of care in athletic training has gotten much higher since I first became a certified athletic trainer. We can do things now that I was never allowed to do before. Uh, One place that you see a big change in this is emergency medicine. Emergency medicine, an EMT today can do way more things when I first became an EMT. So times change, and we need to keep up with the changing times. It's not a bad idea to put together a safety committee in your athletic department to look at safety concerns for the athletic program and assess implementation of approved safety measures. Going back and reviewing things with your safety committee is always a good thing to do. All right, if you have any questions, as always, drop me an email, talk to me in class. You know how to get hold of me, and I will talk to you later. Thanks.